Coming up on Midco Motorsports, Nobles County Speedway played host to the MSTS 360 Series. We've got the highlights and reaction from Worthington. And it was the Race of Champions qualifier Saturday night at Dakota State Fair Speedway. Find out which drivers qualified to race at the Great Wissota 100 in September. All of that plus a preview of the best 2 weeks in sprint car racing. The green flag drops now. Good evening and welcome to Midco Motorsports. I'm David Brown, filling in for Jay Elson this week. Well, fans at Nobles County Speedway in Worthington, Minnesota were treated to something a little different on Friday night. The third-mile dirt track usually plays host to all IMCA sanctioned classes, such as the hobby stocks, the sport compacts, and the modifieds. So when the Midwest Sprint Touring Series, or MSTS 360, made its way to the track, fans were in for quite a treat. Those fans packed the grandstands for the rare sprint car only event in Worthington, and we'll dive right into the main event with those MSTS 360s. Pick it up on lap 2 after an early caution restart. It's the 27 of Dalton Johnson grabbing the lead out front as Jordan Martins takes the second spot from Brock Dump in the 12. 1 lap later, it's the 17B of Ryan Bickett entering the picture. He uses the high side to grab the second spot, and he wasn't done there. Next time by, he stays in that high groove and takes the lead over from Johnson. He would go on to build his lead, but would be forced to come to a stop just as he catches lap traffic. A couple of back markers get tangled, and Dean Brown goes for a wild ride. He would be okay, but his car not so much. After the restart, it would look like Bickett would run away with things, but keep an eye on Eric Lutz in the 6 car. He uses the cushion in turn 1 to get around Johnson for second. The caution would come out yet again just as Lutz was looking to make his move for the lead on Bickett, but he wouldn't have to wait long to make his move again, however, as he completes the pass on the 17B right here after the caution restart, and that would be the last lead change we'd see. Lutz survives one final caution and hangs on for the victory after starting in the 7th spot.
Sometimes you can take a chance like that and it doesn't usually work out for you, but tonight it was lucky enough to work out, So, yeah, it was a great night, and, got to thank everybody involved.
With the win, Lutz remains on top of the MSTS leaderboard as he is 26 points ahead of Jody Rosenboom. Ryan Bickett checks in third with Dusty Ballenger and Greg Baker rounding out the top 5. Let's go out to Rapid Speedway, where the full moon was on full display Friday night, and we get things started off with the hobby stocks. Lap 3 after a caution restart, it's the 83 of Devin Van Velduzen who jumps out in front, but his lead would be short-lived as they come down the front stretch. He's going to get some company from Dylan Vandentop and Blake Ahrens, and eventually it'll be Ahrens who goes up high to grab the lead. Fast forward a few laps now, and Justin Regnerus comes knocking on the door. He takes command as they pass the flagstad, and just as the yellow flag comes out with 3 to go. So Regnerus would lead the pack to the green flag, and he hangs on for the win, his second victory of the season at Rocky. To the B-Mods we go now. After a lap 2 restart, we've got a battle for the lead between Dustin Cruz and Josh Kelderman, and it's Cruz who uses the inside to pull out in front. After another caution restart later in the race, Cruz finds himself side by side with Maya Christensen in the 782, and Christensen does what he does best, getting around Cruz on the outside and moving into the lead. Christensen would pull away on the final 3 laps and hang on for his 3rd victory of the season. Let's go on to the USRA stock cars. Remember this guy? Yeah, it's Justin Regnerus. He starts inside row 2 for this one, but it doesn't take him long to jump out in front. He grabs the lead as they head down the back chute. After a lap 5 restart, it's Regnerus getting a little too high in turn 2, and that allows last week's winner, Rich Gregwire, to grab the lead momentarily, but Regnerus gets right back as they come out of turn 4. Gregwire keeps the pressure on for the remainder of the race, but Regnerus is able to hold him off and take the checkered flag for the 2nd time in one night. To the main event we go now, to the Super Late Model Racing Series. Pole sitter Corey Zietner jumps out in front early, But on the 8th lap, he would get some company. Watch this move by Tad Pospisil in the 04 machine. He slides around Zietner on the outside to take over the top spot. A few circuits later, he finds himself in lap traffic, makes another nice pass to get by some of these slower vehicles. Pospisil builds a nice lead and cruises to victory and an $1,100 payday at Rapid Speedway.
Feels real good. We blew a motor up a couple weeks ago, and so it's kind of down in the dumps, took the wind out of our sail, and finished third at our home track last week. And so to come out and win here at a new racetrack and in front of all these new fans, it's really cool.
With the win, Tad Pospisil remains on top of the SLMR standings. Norfolk, Nebraska native is 28 points ahead of Kyle Burke and 32 points ahead of Bill Layton Jr. A couple of tracks in Wissota country hosted qualifiers for the Race of Champions. Highlights from Aberdeen and Huron are next. Welcome back. Dakota State Fair Speedway will once again play host to the Wissota 100 this year. The 5-day extravaganza starts on September 15th, and this past Saturday, drivers got their chance to qualify for the event's Race of Champions. The street stocks would race first for the opportunity to qualify for the Race of Champions. Inside row 2, starter Brock Stout wastes little time getting things going as he passes Chris Sayre for the second spot. And he wasn't done there. One lap later, he sets his sights on the leader Blaine Balloon in the 24, and he completes the pass as he dives to the inside. Stout builds a huge lead and goes on to take the checkered flag.
You make a little mistake, and you think everybody's coming for you. And apparently I was pulled out away pretty far, but I still thought I could hear people right behind me the whole time.
The Midwest Modifieds were next, and we'd have a good battle for the lead early on between Dennis Check in the 2 car and Tracy Johnson in the 19, and it's Check who gets the advantage early. He would go on to build a pretty good lead, but saw it diminish as the caution comes out with 7 laps to go for James Wells as he spins out and has engine problems. After the restart, the 3 car of Lauren Johnson makes a pass on Tracy Johnson and finds himself in the 2nd position after starting way back in 12. He wasn't done there, however. 2 laps later, he dives down low in turns 1 and 2 and takes the lead away from Check, and he would hang on for the remainder of the race and qualify himself for the Race of Champions in September. To the Modifieds we go now, and the start would be important in this one. Scott Ward started inside row 2, but he cuts to the inside as the green flag drops and comes out of turn 2 with the lead. And it would be a game of follow the leader from there on out. One caution wasn't going to slow Ward down as he cruises his way to an easy victory. To the Super Stocks we go now. The 10 car of Cole Searing jumps out to an early lead, and he looked pretty smooth for most of the race. But after a late caution restart, he would get some company from Dustin Arthur in the 21X, but Arthur has some engine problems and Searing would pull away. Searing wouldn't coast to an easy victory, however. On the final lap, he gets a challenge from Jamie Newmiller. Newmiller cuts to the inside for the dash to the finish, but Searing has just enough to hang on for the victory.
Came into 3 a little hard and slid up a little bit, and when I tried to come back down, the 6 car was there, and it was a tight finish for the end, but I was able to hold him off.
I can't quite finish out the deal here. I've gotten second 3 times in a Race of Champions qualifier, once in Miller to Cole Searing, Sheridan last weekend to Pat Lemire, and tonight to Cole Searing again.
On to the 20-lap main event for the late models, and just like the Modifieds feature, the start would be critical in this one. Remember this guy, Scott Ward? Yeah, you know him. He starts on the pole and jumps out to an early lead. He would get a brief challenge from Brian Deed, but Deed runs a little too low and gets over the barrel in turn 1. That would slow his momentum and allow Ward to eventually pull away. Ward would survive a caution flag with 5 laps to go and goes on to win and complete the twin feature sweep.
It's just starting up front makes it a lot easier because we've been starting 7th and 8th, the last 4 or 5 times, so it was a lot easier tonight than it has been the last 4 or 5 nights.
Ward hangs on to the top spot in the standings at Dakota State Fair Speedway. He has a 38-point cushion between himself and Gary Brown Jr. David McDonald is currently 40 points off the pace in 3rd. Let's head to Aberdeen now, where Brown County Speedway also hosted a Race of Champions qualifier Friday night. To the street stocks we go. The 46C of Johnny Carter starts on the pole and leads the field in the turn 1, but that's where the melee starts. The 009 of Brad Sheridan gets the worst of it. As he gets flipped on his side, Sheridan would be okay, but the car was not okay. After a couple of restarts, it was smooth sailing from there, however, as Carter, in a rare Brown County appearance, holds off the 88 of Scott Witkowski and the 22 of Arthur Berger for the win. Let's go to the late models now. Picking up on lap 2 as the 11K of Jeremy Keller leads the pack. Kent Arment in the 9 and Scott Ward in the 37 make some contact coming out of turn 4. Luckily, they both keep control, but that would foreshadow the events to come. 3 laps later, Arment gets too high off turn 4, and things would get ugly from there. The 00 of Brian Berger was the first to go. He collects the 87K of Curtis Kranz, the 12 of Chad Becker, the 75S of Mike Yeager, and the 52X of David McDonald. He spent several minutes upside down in his car, crews working feverishly to get McDonald out of his vehicle and put him back on all 4. Fast forward to the final lap now. Keller is still out in front. He gets some company from Scott Ward, but Keller would eventually hold him off and hang on for the victory in his first appearance at the track this season. To the modifieds now. Point leader Todd Stark in the 33 starting right next to pole sitter Brent Dutenhofer in the 48 on the start. Dutenhofer wins the drag race in the number 1 with Stark in tow. Fast forward to lap 10 now. Kent Arment in the 9 working his way past Stark to move into second place and trying to close in on Dutenhofer. Arment would make a push on the outside right here, but the 48 stays in the low groove and holds off Arment, taking the checkered flag and also qualifying for the Race of Champions.
I changed my lineup a little bit and definitely made a lot of time up on him, but as soon as I saw his nose, I said I'm going straight to the top to block him coming to the checkers. I'm not going to let him get it.
And the fans were treated to a second late model feature as last week's got rained out. Picking up on a lap 7 caution restart, pole sitter Rich Thomas tries to hold off Kent Arment on the outside, but he is unable to do so, and Arment would grab the lead. 1 lap later, check this out, Scott Ward challenging Arment. The two would go back and forth until they make contact, and Arment goes off the track. That would send Ward to the back of the field and eventually out of the competition. Arment would seemingly have smooth sailing from there, but take a close look at the 9 car. You can see his window net is down, and that is a safety issue. The crews try to get it to stay latched, but no such luck. Arment is forced to pull into the pits. That set up Pat Wisegram and Kurt Jelling with 13 laps to go, and Jelling used the top shelf to his advantage to get by the 32, and he would hang on for yet another victory at his hometown track. 0.05 of a second. That was the difference in a photo finish at Huset's on Sunday. Find out which drivers brought the crowd to its feet when we come back. Welcome back. Huset Speedway started the IMCA Ray Savers class this year, intending to give more drivers the chance to compete, as the 305 sprint car is a little more affordable to maintain than a 360 or a 410. But some critics have been skeptical, believing the 305 action hasn't been really all that great. Well, Robby, Wolfgang, and Dusty Ballenger, they had something to say about that on Sunday. The Ray Savers would get going in a bit, but we'll lead off with the street stocks. Zach Olivier still looking for his first win at Huset's, and he gets out in front early after starting outside row 1. After a lap 3 caution restart, however, Olivier slips up just enough for Sean Taylor in the 71 to take over the lead. 3 laps to go now. Olivier looking to get that lead back as he tries the inside line on Taylor, but Taylor would hold him off for the time being. A caution would come out with 2 laps to go, so Olivier would have one more chance to make the pass. But as the white flag flies, Taylor holds him off for good and goes on to win for the second time this season. Here come those IMCA Ray Savers. We'll start on lap 4 as Trevor Mell tries to hold off Robby Wolfgang in the 429, but no such luck for Mell as Wolfgang works the outside to take the lead. Dusty Ballenger was patient as he worked his way into second place, and he kept his eyes squarely on Wolfgang as they got into lap traffic. 1 lap to go, the Combine has to make his move, and he does so right here as he goes down low in turns 3 and 4 to just get by Wolfgang for the victory. Here's another look from the finish line camera as we slow things down. Ballenger uses the lap car to his advantage, and he literally inches his way past Wolfgang and into victory lane. A photo finish and a great victory for Dusty Ballenger.
Coming to that last corner, I seen the white flag, and I was right at his bumper, so I was going to go low, and I figured he'd go high, and there was a lap car in the middle of us, and at the last second he went low, so I had to take the inside berm, and there was just a little bit of traction down there, and I think that's what got us the race.
Let's increase the horsepower, shall we? The 410 Outlaw sprints are up, and it's Troy Schurz who starts on the pole and grabs the early lead. A nice battle for third early on as Dusty Zomer and Logan Forler go back and forth for a few circuits. Meanwhile, on lap 5, it's Ryan Bickett moving into the lead from his second place starting spot. A caution would come out with 7 laps to go that bunches up the field, and on the restart, Jody Rosenboom in the 14 makes a bid for the lead, but Bickett says, "I don't think so." He holds on for the remaining 6 laps to take the checkered flag for the first time this season at Huset.
Friday night I actually got to lead some laps in my 360 car, so got me feeling real comfortable and a little ego booster that I've been running pretty consistent, but know that I'm a little better.
Dusty Zomer would go on to finish in third, but he still sits atop the point standings. Tim Kading wrecked in the heat races and was not able to compete in the feature, so the gap between first and second is now 59 points. Ryan Bickett checks in at third place, with Jody Rosenboom and Matt Jewell rounding out the top 5. Another great night for racing at River Cities Speedway. Street stocks were up first, and it's the 8T of Doug Van Mill leading Jim Geringer in the 12. Both are brought to a halt, however, when Jersey Porter flips over in turn 3. A small fire follows as Porter climbs out just fine, but his racing was unfortunately done for the evening. Fast forward to the final lap, it's Van Mill still doing battle with Geringer, and Van Mill hanging on for the victory on the day of his 22nd wedding anniversary. Let's go to the late models now. 10 laps to go. Shane Eddington in the 5E. He had held on to the lead from the very first lap, but breaking through in turn 4 is the 42S of Donald Shaw and the 12S of Brad Singh. They take over first and second respectively. 5 laps to go now. Singh staying low as Shaw gets hung up in some lap traffic, and that allows Singh to get by and take over the lead. The 12S wouldn't look back from there as he goes on to take the checkered flag for the second straight week at the Bull Ring.
You know, Don Shaw came to town tonight, and he's a strong runner. He won last night in Ada, and of course he's out in the lead tonight. And I basically kind of pick the right lines. I race here every week, so I kind of know the tendencies of different drivers, and that was a benefit to me and maybe hindered Don a little bit.
On to the sprint cars now. Pick it up with 20 to go on a caution restart. The 5 car of Dave Glennon sets the pace, but number 6, Zach Wild, wastes no time as he goes upstairs to take over the lead. But that lead would not last. 4 laps later, Wade Nygaard dips inside on turn 1 as he would take over the top spot. And then on the final lap, things would get very interesting. Dusty Zomer is nipping at the heels of Nygaard as they navigate through lap traffic, but Nygaard would hold off Zomer for the exciting finish and the victory.
Lap traffic did play a pretty big part in it. There's a couple good breaks right away in the beginning, and once we did get the lead, we just sort of stayed comfortable and didn't get too impatient, and it all worked out for us.
Nygaard remains in second place in the point standings as Austin Pierce sits on top of the leaderboard. Casey Mack and Chris Ranton are tied for third, and Greg Nikotenko in 5th place. Well, Thursday marks the start of the best 2 weeks in sprint car racing. We'll get the lowdown from Knoxville Speedway when Midco Motorsports rolls on. Well, this is the start of the best 2 weeks in racing at the sprint car capital of the world. The 360 Knoxville Nationals get underway Thursday night in Iowa, while the 410 Nationals start on Wednesday, August 12th. Our very own Rod Pattison catches up with Tony Bokhoven from Knoxville Raceway in this week's Inside Track.
If you're a sprint car fan, there is nothing better than these 2 weeks at Knoxville Raceway. And here with us on this week's Inside Track is longtime friend and veteran lead announcer at Knoxville Raceway, Tony Bokhoven. Tony, thanks for the time.
No problem, Hot Rod. Thanks for asking me.
All right, Tony, before we get into the racing on the track, wanted to get your take on what folks in Knoxville are feeling about all the changes this year in sprint car racing. Tony Stewart purchasing the All-Star Circuit of Champions Series to follow up his ownership of Eldora a few years ago. Todd Queering purchasing Jackson Speedway and then founding the National Sprint League. Chuck Brennan taking over ownership at Huset Speedway. The name change, the pending move to running Saturday nights. The winds of change are blowing pretty strongly, more so in 1 year than I can remember for a long time, if ever.
Well, you're right. There are a lot of things going on in sprint car racing now. When you think about Tony Stewart purchasing the All-Stars, that was one of those things that needed to happen for that series. As they were struggling, Tony came in there. He brought it life. He brought it some promise. And, when you look at their car counts, they're getting 45 to 50 cars at many of their races. So lots of great momentum behind what's going on with the All-Stars. So if you think about Todd Queering, that guy's been around a long time now, and he's done a lot for sprint car racing with teams on the Outlaw Tour before, teams locally here at Knoxville. But purchasing the Jackson Speedway, I was up there earlier this year for an NSL race, and man, the place is just wonderful. And as far as the NSL is concerned, Jackson Speedway is going to be a great place to go, and I would encourage people to go there because it doesn't even look like the same place. As far as Huset's and the purchase there, I'm not sure that changing the name from Huset Speedway to Badlands is really the right thing to do. I think when you think about that racetrack, Huset Speedway has become the brand. And I don't think that was what was wrong there, if anything was wrong there. But hey, there's always good things that come with change. And so we wish them luck. If Saturday night is the night they think they need to race to provide a better show to their fans, then good luck, because I think it's going to be a tough pull for them. But if they can make it work, that's all that matters.
Now let's talk racing on the track. Of course, Knoxville Speedway begins this weekend with the 25th Annual Arnold Motor Supply 360 Nationals. Now, this is an event that had been dominated by Shane Stewart with his 4-year run before Brian Brown took the crown last year. There's some really good 360 teams in the country, and this thing seems to be wide open. How do you see it?
Well, I think you're right. It is wide open. With all of the 360 action that's been happening this summer, there's been a lot of 410 guys that have been doing double duty. Of course, Shane Stewart will be very tough again. But there's guys like Justin Henderson that a lot of people in the Sioux Falls area are very familiar with. Probably one of the most dominant 360s locally. And I think when it comes time this weekend for the 360 Knoxville Nationals, he's one of those guys that will be right up there.
And next weekend, of course, the 55th Annual FVP Knoxville Nationals presented by Casey General Store beginning Wednesday and going through Saturday. It's been the Donnie Schatz Nationals as of late, winning 8 of the last 9. And if it wasn't for a burned piston with 2 laps to go during the 50th, it would have been close to 9 in a row. Is this another year of the addition of Donnie Schatz against the world?
Well, I would like to say no, but, how can you bet against him? He's won, including in Australia this year, he's won 26 times already, Hot Rod. So he's been very dominant. Of those 26, I think 21 of them are World of Outlaw wins. So how can you bet against him? Now, he has been getting beat the last couple weeks, so there's hope, right, that we could get a new winner. So, there's a chance that somebody could position themselves in the right place to beat Donnie Schatz.
And finally, Tony, who are some of the local or regional guys that could make some noise at this year's Nationals?
Well, if you think about the All-Stars, for example, Dale Blaney has won 11 times this year. He's got 2 World of Outlaw wins, and the rest of the time he's been winning with the All-Stars. Locally here, there's some guys that could contend. There's nobody that's had more success at Knoxville than obviously Danny Lasowski. You've got other guys, of course, Brian Brown. How can you not talk about him? You'd have to bet on Donnie Schatz to win, but I think there are a handful of guys that can beat him on Saturday night.
All right, Tony, looking forward to seeing you next weekend. Take care and have some fun these next 2 weeks, will you?
Hey, Hot Rod, we sure will. And again, thanks for having us on. But one thing I do want to encourage all the fans that come down from Sioux Falls, I'm sitting right inside the front door of the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and behind me are a row of Doug Wolfgang's cars. So for all of you Doug Wolfgang fans that are coming down from Sioux Falls, this is one of those things that you must absolutely check out because it is impressive.
That again, Tony Bokhoven with our preview of the Knoxville Nationals on this week's Inside Track.
All right, thanks, Rod. You can stay up to date with the results from Knoxville by visiting their website at knoxvilleraceway.com or on Twitter at Knoxville Races. Well, we have reached the white flag. We'll wrap things up with a look at your weekend schedule coming up next. Welcome back. Here's a look at your Midco Motorsports calendar for the weekend ahead. Enjoy the races, everybody. Jay Elson will be back here next week for another Midco Motorsports.